Hey, Sav.
Hey, Shay, and bonjour, brand connoisseurs. Welcome to the Art of Branding podcast on the Team SCG podcast network. So, Shay, rate your day with minimal context.
8.5.
8.5.
It's Friday. That's my context.
That's a very, very strong rating, I would say.
What about you?
I would say 7.3.
Okay. Long night.
Very long. Much longer of a night than I would ever sign up for on a school night, and a very social night. So yeah.
It's fair.
You can imagine. But Shay, tell me about the elephant in the room.
It's one of my favorites. It is, there's a couple that we're going to kind of group together in this episode.
Multiple elephants.
Multiple elephants, if you will. So it's, the biggest one is, working with not only your spouse, but your in-laws.
Ooh, spicy.
And then the second one is how to penetrate an industry and grow vertically.
So would you venture to say how to get it up?
I would.
Okay. Okay.
And we have an expert on that subject today.
All subjects mentioned.
And without further ado, we'd love to introduce him. But this is my brother-in-law, also the number one sales rep in our company, Mr. Justin Greenberger. Welcome to our show.
Hi.
It took us a lot to get you here.
A lot.
You're in very high demand, Mr. Justin.
But I've given you my time, so we're good to go.
We're super excited. So before we get into all of the things, I think it's really cool to kind of just give everyone a background on you as a person first and what led you to decide that you wanted to come into our industry. So kind of back up a little bit and talk about the retail side. He did a lot of retail before he came into our industry, which gave him, I think, in my opinion, a leg up on your creativity and your taste specifically. But speak to that journey a little bit.
Take it from the top, Mr. Justin.
Yeah, I don't even know what the top is, honestly.
Well, you were born in Atlanta.
So
Georgia.
I had a retail background, but I wasn't always in retail. I mean, I did customer service for a tech company for a while. So I had experience in a few different industries, but definitely majority of my experience, I would say, would be high-end retail. So not just retail, but extremely high-end luxury retail.
Luxury brands.
Yeah. And, I did that for probably 10 plus years very successfully.
I was going to say, you were also at the very top of that.
Yeah.
So to give the listeners a little context, which brands were you working for?
So I did about a 7-year stint at Tiffany & Company, and then I was with Harry Winston for 2 years. But prior to that, I was with Saks. But yeah, at Tiffany, I was at the top of my game there, company-wide. And I was always really successful. It wasn't, and I loved what I did. Obviously, with retail, you deal with not the best schedule and things like that, right? You miss holidays, and when all of your friends and family are off and enjoying their days, you're stuck at work, which kind of sucks. So, and then, obviously we rolled real hard into COVID and the retail world really shut down, which, I know our industry did too, but it was in a much different way. You guys were at that point at least coming to work and still trying to make things happen. Whereas, we were completely closed and I was sitting on the couch. So, after a few months of that, boredom really set in, and I was like, all right, I think maybe it's time to give this a try, I guess we need to rewind a little bit. So when I was working at Tiffany, I thought what you guys did was so cool and interesting. I tried to actually do both for a while.
And this is not something you could dip a toe into.
No. So I cut my schedule back down to Tiffany to part-time. So I was working at Tiffany part-time and I was working here at SCG part-time. But like Shayna said, it was just it didn't go well. So we did it for about 6 months probably. And at that point I was also working 6 days a week. So it was 3 days at Tiffany and 3 days here. So I was exhausted.
Yeah, you were just burnt out.
Yeah. And it wasn't working. Tiffany was still fine, but here it just wasn't working here. And so I kind of thought, all right, maybe this isn't for me. And I gave up on that for probably 4 or 5 years. Really.
And to give context, you've already been in our family now at this point for how long when we're making this decision?
Wait, the first time I was here?
Yeah.
Probably 4 years, 3 years.
Yeah. So you obviously are around my family and you're seeing all of the things and, everything that we're doing and talking about. And it sounds obviously interesting. And
no, I literally used to say because we have dinner every single Friday night, we're a very close family, and we'd be sitting around and it's Jesus Christ, you guys only talk about SCG and promo. I don't have anything to add to this conversation.
Girl, you don't have to tell me, girl.
He was so bored.
You don't have to tell me.
I literally have nothing to add to this conversation. And I used to have Brian, who is Shayna's husband, at least, he was also on the outside. So at least we would talk. But then Brian came full time, and I was like, all right, well, so like,
it's time.
Yeah.
It's time.
So when, like I said, when COVID happened and we shut down and it was so bored, like I started like easing into this conversation about coming back, but it was such like I don't know, it didn't really work out the first time. Like there were a lot of reservations, I think, not only on my side, but I mean on your guys' side as well.
I think more we just wanted you to be happy, and it was something that was like, if we're going to do it, then we need to go all in at this point. And we were going through a hyper growth spurt on our end, where me and Josh at this point are like struggling, I would say. We're struggling to figure out like where the business is going to go. I wanted to get out of sales,
Right.
is where this is happening at this point. Josh can't handle the travel industry on his own. So in comes Justin at this point in really perfect timing to say, okay, Josh is about to make a shift into our supply chain. Before he does this fully, I'm going to come in and learn as much as I can. You guys probably worked like side by side on the account for how long would you say?
We overlapped for probably
like 4 or 5 months,
maybe 6 months. Yeah.
So you're coming in, you're learning as much as you can in terms of what the landscape of the travel industry that we work with currently looks like. Who are our clients, who are our buyers, what's our spend that we've done so far. And then your job at this point is to figure out how your kind of individualism can come in here and quite literally bump that business up. So talk about that journey a little bit, because where this ends, and for everyone, like I'm going to give you the ending of the book before we start, but where this ends is this team that has been developed around Justin and his skills is now the number one in Facilis Group 3 years in a row, and really beating out our industry in terms of a sales perspective. They're in the top like 0.01% of what they're able to do. Yeah. They're doing more revenue than most distributors will do in multiple years of revenue combined. So it's a really impressive, expansive story on how to vertically grow within an industry. And although the relationships that he came in to manage at first had been established for over 20 years, we were capped at what I call, I don't know how I would like explain it to people who don't really know what we're talking about, but we were only dealing with the employees of the travel industry and not the vessels themselves. And that's, I think, what really changed was your ability to go in and kind of dig deeper in terms of this is what you're starting with, but what happens if kind of all bets are off and let's just blow it up from there. So what's your take on that and how you kind of dug in?
Yeah, I mean, listen, it was a pretty big learning curve, because not only did I had to learn like our industry and Facilis, which I still it's fast forward 5 years.
You're not our best processor.
I'm still not great at.
You have a team that complements,
Exactly.
Where you where you may not shine the most.
Exactly. But yes. I had to learn, the industry of our biggest clients, and I think that's got a lot to do with why we've been as successful as we are, because at this point, I do consider myself a pretty big expert in that specific area of travel that we tend to specialize in, to the point where, I mean, even employees now of this company like call me to figure out how to do stuff or how to move stuff or how to get stuff to a ship. Like, I know their business better than a lot of them do.
Yeah. I think that's part of your secret sauce, though, is like you took the time to understand the industry from top to bottom and figure out what other companies can't do, which is the logistics side of the ordering. So anyone can get something produced, but can somebody get something produced and delivered onto a ship, which if you miss the loading date of a ship, it's gone. So It is so precise when it comes to the timing of things and how the actual life cycle of a sale needs to go compared to what we were doing typically, which is standard dropship business. So this actually revitalized and revolutionized our company as a whole, because we had to level up at this point. Once you got the opportunity, not only that,
you just have to be so flexible. Like, there's so much in our industry that's black and white. Like, I'm going to put in this job. It's for t-shirts. They're being printed. The event date is here. This is when I need to be there by. In the travel industry, you have to be so fluid because things change on a daily basis. Like maybe you're supposed to be shipping to Seattle a job, but actually for whatever, let's say there's a storm in Seattle, now you need to ship it to Los Angeles. Like you have to be so fluid and be able to adapt to change super quickly.
It's never what it seems.
To be able to do a good job. And like you mentioned, when I came in, we had all of these super well-established relationships that had done great business for a lot of years.
but it can only go to a certain level. We weren't
right. Like
embedded.
you're quickly,
There was a ceiling.
You're quickly realizing like, okay, well, this is great to be working with, the VP of marketing or the VP of sales, and they're great. It's great business, and we enjoy working with them and their teams. But
We knew there was.
but pretty quickly, I was like, something's not adding up, because I knew that they're using a lot more stuff like that our industry provides
And we're seeing
that
it.
wasn't
We're seeing
that
all
wasn't
these
coming
things.
from us, and like we weren't even getting the opportunity. So it's like, where is this stuff coming from? Like how is this getting to the client? Like
We're not talking to the right people is what you realize
Right.
at that point.
Which, okay, so then this brings us to like, obviously you became an industry expert and whatnot, but I think personally, like, your biggest strength and superpower is how you build relationships.
Funny story, like maybe I had been in the role for about a year or so, and like one of the things that both Josh and I like to do is entertain clients. Like I think it's really important, really big. But it's not just like taking them out to dinner or taking them to like a sporting event or something like that. Like we have people over to our house pretty frequently, and this was like a year into the role. We decided we were going to have a dinner at our house one night, and like, the business we work in is so like incestuous. Like if you leave one company, you're still in the same industry, so like everybody knows everybody. And we started inviting people that's like, oh yeah, you could come to the house for dinner. Like, and we knew that people knew each other, and like it was funny. We didn't even realize until we were sitting at the table, and I look around, and I was like, this is like the United Nations of cruise lines. There was literally somebody from every single like company at the dinner table, and I was like, that's kind of cool.
I think it's so important though to talk about this part, because when you look at the difference of someone like me who is very successful in sales versus someone like him who redefines what success is when it comes to sales, that's the key difference maker. And that's something that for me to be able to do, I had to modify myself so much from the entertainment perspective. I am low-key an introvert, and people don't know that about me. But what they were able to do, they're both of them, my brother and my brother-in-law Justin, they're magnetic. And it's like they have this entertainment ability to where, and I don't even think it's like from a surface level just entertaining. You genuinely care about these people, and you develop these relationships with these people in a way that is meaningful and something that has legs behind it. And I think that if you asked me, that would be one of the biggest secrets to your sauce. And obviously it's the knowledge in the back end, but your ability to connect with these people and then from there understand their core needs and more importantly their pain points, that I've watched the evolution of your success play a huge piece.
I mean, not only that, like, as our team grew from me plus 1 to me plus 10, I made it very clear all along the way, like we were to be an extension of
the cruise lines.
We were to be an extension of these people's teams. Like if you're assigned like to be with the loyalty marketing team, like consider yourself their employee almost. Like it's like immerse yourself into their business, and that's how we've stayed as successful as we have.
Yeah.
So how would you say, so a really interesting piece of your story is like you're coming in at a point where pretty much the cruise lines had all shut down, and now we're getting started on things picking back up again. That was an actual great opportunity for us as the landscape of the vendors changed within that industry. But how, from your chair, how did you balance the fact that these are uncharted territories really? And like, I know you were getting a lot of pushback, not necessarily from me, but some, from finance and different things of how we're going to fund the orders, how we're going to essentially change our business model to be able to support these opportunities, which are bigger than anything that we'd ever seen before. And that fear that I know we all had of like, should we do this? Should we take this leap? There's such high risk in what we were going to do. How did you handle that from an in-law perspective, that you are like, obviously very committed to this and you see what the potential is, but now you have to go up against your family and say like, I believe in this. I need you guys to believe in me. What did that look like for you?
No, I mean, listen, there were a lot of intense conversations. So like when we first started, if you fast forward, or you're around 6 years ago, $10,000 was a sale that, we rang the bell, we clapped out, we celebrated about, a $50,000 sale. Like we're all going to dinner that night. Like it was insane. You know what I mean? And those sales are still important. Don't get me wrong. But when you start talking about $1 million sale, and there's a lot more, like you have a lot more skin in the game, like it becomes a lot more of a challenge, even like especially when it's your first one. So like, you're right. COVID had shut down, cruise lines had shut down. And I don't remember exactly how it happened, but we produced like some PPE. Oh, I know exactly what happened. So there was a big issue on one of the cruise lines. They were doing like a specialty cruise. I don't remember where it was, but it was one of like the luxury lines, but it was owned this line was owned by a company that owns several cruise brands. And the CEO of this company, a Fortune 500 company, called Josh and I one morning at like 7 a.m. on a cell phone. And it's like,
hello.
what? And he goes, hey, so I need your help. Can you have like 500 gift bags with toiletries and like basically like toiletry kits put together by 10 o'clock? Yes, of course. So
headed to Walmart.
Josh got up. I got up. We called Josh's mom. Everybody we knew. And it's like, you go to this Target, you go to this Walmart, you go. Literally sent people all over. Got together, put these bags together, met the CEO of this company at a private airport down here, and he welcomed a chartered plane with all these guests, and it was to give them these bags like once they got off. And like
that set the stage. But that's what you mean by being flexible. Like that was something that anybody else would typically say like, no, there's no way. And it's not that it was impossible. It's that from an industry perspective, if we weren't able to find it in like our network, people would just say no. And that's what they changed for us, was like, I don't care if you have to go to Walmart. This CEO doesn't care if you have to go to Walmart. He physically can't do it. Someone's going to do it for him. And we would be idiots if it wasn't us.
And we want that person and that partner to be us. And that was an attitude that, I mean, I came on the scene shortly thereafter that, because I think even in one of my first like interviews, I heard that story, and that like to have that conversation is so impactful of like, oh, these people get the job done. And like, that was an attitude that like I bought into.
Yes.
It was the first taste of magic. Like we can just make magic happen if we take no out of our vocabulary.
So again, like we started seeing this like path to bigger and bigger, like open up. And then obviously connections were made and intros were made to procurement departments, which we quickly learned like that's where you really want to be if you can get. And obviously cruise lines were shut down, but like crew was still on board and they needed PPE, because that's when everybody had to be in PPE, right? You had to have on a mask, you had to have hand sanitizer, you had to have all these things. Like, it wasn't that, I mean, our whole industry was selling that stuff, right? It wasn't any like unicorn that we found. Like every company wanted to buy PPE, but we knew that we were building towards a nice opportunity, and like we were having a ton of conversations, and we kept telling like you and Dave and Barry, like, hey, a big opportunity is coming. We don't know how big it's going to be yet. Like we're waiting on emails, right? And then all of a sudden we get this email one day and it's like, hey, we want to buy 30 million masks, and we want to buy 10 million bottles of hand sanitizer. And I was like, what?
Yeah, we don't know how to do that. At this point, we don't know how to do that.
We were like, what?
Yeah, of course.
So like, then we start having these meetings, like, and some of it was very scary. And like, as the salesperson, you want to be frustrated because it's like, I have this opportunity. Like there's this client ready.
How are you going to tell me no? Yeah.
Ready to buy, millions of dollars worth of stuff.
This is what you guys pay me for.
Right. And then you go into a meeting, and like at the time, yes, very frustrated. Looking back on it, I totally understand
how
where
scared we all
Dave
were.
And Barry, like I understand where their reservations were. Like if something goes wrong, it could take the whole company could be gone. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
When you're used to operating at selling $10,000 orders or even $50,000 orders, to process a $5 million order is very different. Like it's very scary.
Which is a lot of pressure on them, but it's a lot of pressure on you, because if you then, they then put the faith in you to process this order, you have to make sure every piece of that is done to the T.
We're also going through our learning curve at this point. So that's the first, right? And then like that, to me, what I saw was that opened the faucet. So once we've said yes to something like that, the word starts to travel about you and what you can do and how it can be done.
Well, I was going to say too, like because it wasn't just SCG learning how to process and handle and manage a program of that size. It was us trying to learn how to not screw it up, getting this stuff delivered, all over the world. So this was our first like time in learning that. And then they're all of a sudden they come at us, they're onboarding us for their like online portal where they send us POs, and
we're in 1,000 square foot warehouse at this point, trying to just figure out what the hell to do with this many hand sanitizers.
We have 4 containers on the ocean now with goods, and it's
with
like,
nowhere for them to go.
Where is this going to go? Like, I think you remember like in our, literally like you had to like shuffle down the hallway.
No, of course.
Because we're literally stacking boxes floor to ceiling in hallways. Like, thank God the fire marshal didn't come.
It's so important though. This is such an important piece, because this is where most companies would say, we're not ready. This isn't for us. And I do feel like this, when I put myself back in this time that we're in and I rethink about the decisions and the conversations that are happening, this is where we evolved. This is where the first piece of evolution happened, because we're like, we have no clue what to do yet. We have no idea how to handle this, but we realize that like, if we can just figure this out, if we can, even if I never admitted this, but like in my head, it was like, even if we don't make a profit on this order, if we can figure this out and then try to make a profit on the next order, this is where everything starts to come together for us. So that I think that the pivotal decision of we're going to do this anyway, the cargo's on the water. We have 3 months at this point to figure out where it's going to go. Like, we're going to figure out how to pay for it and fund it and all the things. We gave you the permission, like, go ahead and do it. That to me was the first step of our evolution. You pushed us to get there and we had to accept it and figure out how to go forward. Okay. So how are you like taking something that you have now, after, let's say a year of us doing it, you feel like you've figured it out. We're doing it right now. We're not losing money on every order. We're kind of getting our footing. How are you then taking this and replicating it over and over again?
I'm never afraid to ask for referrals. Like, if I know that I've done a good job for you, I want you to put me in contact with somebody else, like, that, because that,
I will say you do you do it in a very tactful way.
Not salesy.
No, it's all. Not like but it's more just like, what I bring to your table. You have to know somebody else that needs me as badly as you do.
I mean, thankfully, like, we, at this point, if you fast forward a year after like the initial like PPE stuff and we're back into like regular business, it kind of became like, hey, do you know where I can get so-and-so? And the response is always, call the boys. Just call the boys. Literally, that's what we're known as around
the boys.
Yeah, call the boys. Like, they'll figure it out.
And that, I feel like, is where we got to shine. Like, we have been the first to say that didn't go as planned, and we definitely could have done this way better.
At this point, if they come to me and they want to see if I can source something, I'm going to do everything in my power to find it, whether it's part of our standard business model,
whether it's obvious or super niche.
Even if, I mean, there are times when it's like, there's no way I'm going to make money on this, but it's like, I'll do it. I'm going to do it for you. Like, I'm going to figure it out because I know that you need it.
So with all of that and everything that's going on, like, what would you say was your biggest challenge in this growth journey overall for you?
I think the biggest challenge it was like a personal challenge. I think it was more just like getting SCG as a whole to adapt to this mindset that we're not a little fish anymore. And we need to, like, if we're going to have BDE, we need to have BDE, like
biz dev energy.
Yeah.
I was waiting for you to clean that one up.
We need to like fully embrace it. Like, we can't,
well,
we can't like dip a toe. Like, we either have to be all in or we have to be all out.
Which I think is a testament to, rewind, when you first started at SCG and you were doing it part-time, like, you guys both had that realization of, you either have to be all in on this or you have to be all out. And once you went all in, I mean, it's pretty magical.
It's crazy. It's really, for me, it's so satisfying to be able to look back and even this episode that me and you get to talk about this, it's so crazy if you think about the journey and you think about all of the things that had to come together in order to make this possible and the different paths we could have taken. Like, if we had just made a micro decision differently than we did, I don't know that we would be sitting here today and being able to talk about this.
No, I mean, listen, back in the day when we were working that first big PPE order, like, we were at this, like, do we do it or do we? Not doing it was
an option.
Like,
we considered it. Do we say no?
Right. And had we said no, we would not be where we are.
And I think that was something that you guys were always so firm about, that I don't know that I necessarily believed, but I had to trust in what you and Josh knew about the relationship, in the sense of, like, if we say no now, no is going to be at the top of their head in the terms of will they or will they not be able to do this.
That's what I've been saying for 5 years. Like, I don't ever want to say no, because I feel like the first time you say no,
that's what they remember.
You lose your
confidence.
I don't ever want it. I always want to be ask the boys. I always want that to be everybody's first thought.
Mm-hmm. So my question for you, unless you had one first.
No.
My question for you is, for the people that are so far away from what you've accomplished in terms of sales, like, what advice would you give them? Because I don't know that you knew that what you're doing is possible. So put yourself back in those shoes of, like, just getting started. What advice would you give to somebody that really is trying to even accomplish a fourth of what you've accomplished so far?
I think the biggest thing I would say, just don't be afraid. Like, we're all selling to companies that are buying a lot of stuff, and then maybe you're not the one selling a lot of stuff, but they're still buying it. And like you should be able to like see and identify. Don't be afraid to go after it. Don't be afraid to ask the questions. Like that's the only thing you can do. Like,
Well, I think overall this is going to be like one of the best received episodes that we've had because it's just such juicy content.
Yeah, and so much valuable information that kind of anybody could be applicable to like anybody in any sort of growth journey, because I mean, you've done such amazing growth in the last 5 years. What you have going on is just so inspiring for so many people out there, and so many people are going to find this information so entertaining, of course, because this is quite the story of evolution, but also like inspiring in their own journeys, because it's not just something that like can just happen here,
Yeah.
like, so
There's a quote, and I hope I get this right because it'll be really embarrassing if I don't. And I don't know who it's by, so like don't quote me, but it's essentially that those who aren't doing it should not tell the people who are that it can't be done.
that's not the quote I thought you were about to say.
What was I going to say?
I think we toss around get comfortable with being uncomfortable a lot.
Yeah, that's true too.
that's like tattooed on everybody at this point.
Yeah.
That's where we live. We live being uncomfortable, but it's forced us to grow a lot. And I truly feel like just in the last 5 years alone, our knowledge, our experience, and our expertise at what we do has just gone through the roof. So that I think pretty much sums up how to grow vertically in an industry and how to survive your spouse and your in-laws, which I think we're doing pretty good. All in all, though, thank you for coming on. Thank you for giving everybody kind of some insight here. I think it's super impactful and very insightful. And also it's showing everybody how to go into uncharted territory. And I think that if everyone takes a little bit more risk and gets comfortable with being uncomfortable, we would see a lot more stories like this.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more.
That wraps us up, I think.
Yeah. Thank you so much for coming on. Thanks for clearing your calendar. Thank you for,
Thanks for having me.
delaying your mental health pool day. Justin just got a new pool. Very exciting.
It's still happening.
Yeah, I know. We have to wrap up. So
exactly. We got to wrap this up. Anywho, thank you so much for tuning in. Tune in next Monday for another fabulous episode. Like, subscribe, comment your feedback. Au revoir, brand Au revoir, brand connoisseurs.